Hello Year 7 and welcome to this webinar, Year 7 Descriptive Writing. We have three takeaways, three key learning aims. Firstly, to learn how to engage readers using sensory description. Secondly, to use descriptive techniques. And finally, to understand the zooming in method to structure descriptive writing. Now, all of this is for a specific assignment. Describe a playground. So this is the image that we're looking at, but obviously you may not be given an image. You might just think about or be asked to describe a playground. And any piece of descriptive writing needs imagination. You need to add imagination to your description. So you could decide whether this is in the summer. It could be the last day of term before the summer holiday. You can decide which year groups this is. This looks like the older playground in a primary school or perhaps even a secondary school playground. You could decide to describe a playground that's really wet and that the poor students are kind of dripping from the rain. You could decide to describe a playground where there's going to be some kind of visit from someone important or something different happens. So you can add imagination. Obviously the description is supposed to be realistic, so try not to go adding alien life forces and aspects like that, but you can think about what's around the corner, and you can also think about whose perspective you are writing from. So, Year 7, are you going to try and write from first person's perspective? Perhaps you'll be one of the boys playing football or one of the girls playing football. Are you going to be one of the people sitting and eating their lunch? Are you going to describe it from the caretaker's perspective? Maybe he's really proud to be part of the school. Maybe he's kind of angry, frustrated and tired. Would you describe from a teacher's perspective? Which first person perspective could you use to really add description and bring imagination to your writing? And what about maybe using third person narrative viewpoint instead? That's you writing he, she, they, and you can see all that's going on. You can see as if you're above them. You could be in and out of the playground. You've got lots of different viewpoints that you're going to take, and that's the viewpoint that we will be using today. Now, with your description, the most important technique to think about at first is sensory description. So that is obviously describing through the 5 senses, and you can see with the pictures and with the writing, it's the sense of hearing. You can see that ear, sense of sight. You can see that very blue eye. You can see a sense of touch, that hand, the sense of taste, and the lips and the tongue, and the sense of smell. So you can see that there are all sorts of words that you can use to really get a feeling of the scratching and the thudding that you can hear, or the glossy and shininess, because colour and image and size is all visual, and the spiky, hot or bumpy and rough texture, or the tangy, salty flavour, or the musty, floral smell. So lots of those words can really get you to think about what you could do for your playground description. So I have got a few examples here that I think might help you to write your own. So for the sense of sound or auditory description, you could think about the unruly screeching of children, the thunder of stamping feet, the thud of clumsy footballs, the giggle of eager friends, all of those representing what you can hear. What about the sense of sight? Shiny shoes, neatly stepping on smudged hopscotch chalk, dusty rectangular windows, colossal patches of balding grass. So I've almost personified the grass. It's aging, losing its hair. What about the sense of touch? Maybe the rough and gritty surface where young feet skidded. So rough, gritty skidding is getting that sense of something very, very bumpy and not smooth. And then what about the salty taste of bitter streams of sweat collecting on the tongues of the runners? So the children, boys and girls, are running up and down, got that salty taste of sweat collecting on their tongues. And what about smell? The musty smell of stale school dinners hanging in the mildewed air. So things that aren't really fresh, they haven't been allowed to flow. Okay, I'm sure the school dinners aren't disgusting, but it's just to add to that real sense of the description. So those are some examples of description that's using the senses, that's sensory description. Another important descriptive technique is figurative language, and that is metaphor, onomatopoeia, personification, exaggeration, and simile. And this really adds life to your description. So for the playground, a metaphor could be the buzzing and swarming hive of innumerable children. So it's as if they're animals, and I've used that idea later on to think about these insects like children to be buzzing around. And if you wanted to describe their uniform, and their uniform was yellow and black even, you could really extend that metaphor about how they're buzzing and swarming in this hive of activity. You could also use onomatopoeia. So the non-stop shrieks of desperate calls for the ball pierced many ears. You hear that in the playground. Me, pass it to me. The non-stop shriek. So you're really appealing to that sense of sound, or you're really trying to describe the sound. Personification. I was thinking we could personify the windows. Maybe it's a really bright, hot day, and the windows are shining and reflecting the sunlight. So you could have something like shining, flashing windows, winked and blinked in the piercing sunlight, wincing from its brightness. So you're really giving the windows a personality, which is personification. So you're personalizing and giving them a personality, wincing and winking and blinking. Exaggeration, that's where you have over-the-top language. The pungent stench of yesterday's canteen food was worse than 1,000 dumpsters. You almost smell that lingering odor of food, because sometimes schools don't always have the ventilation that they need. And then a simile, the teachers. Like fierce dogs, teachers dash across the burning concrete and snatch startled pupils away from potential bullies. So they're snatching the pupil's startled, and they're just helping, but they're like fierce dogs. So that simile showing how quickly they move, how confident and strong they are. And again, that idea that it's a hot day, the concrete is burning as they're dashing across the playground. Okay, so those descriptive devices, mopes, really add to your description, year 7. So make sure you have a go at adding them. Right, for the second half of the webinar, we are talking about how you can structure your writing and really looking at technical accuracy as well. So this is a technique that you can have. It is drop. You drop us straight into the action. Zoom, 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 end. So you can see from the image below with the different paragraphs, you start off with the wide scene as if you're panning as some kind of film, and you zoom closer to specific groups and closer to individuals, and then closer to their thoughts and feelings, and then you end strongly. Okay, so you've got a wide angle shot and you zoom closer and closer and closer and closer. And this is a really helpful technique to structure your description. So it's really good that you've got a range of powerful and effective description, using sensory description, using figurative language like mopes, but it's also really good that you understand how to put the writing all together in different sections. So let's talk through the different sections. Let's look at the drop. Well, the drop, it'd be good in the drop to use your mopes. Start with a metaphor. So you're thinking about them as insects, as animals. Talk about the shrieking. Talk about the flashing windows. Talk about the smell. Talk about the teachers and everyone going for the ball. So you've got this wide angled shot, if you like, of the whole playground, the noise and the sounds and the sights and the chaos and the teachers and the smells, and so really giving that vivid view, this kind of vivid overview for your readers. What about the next one? It's a zoom. You're zooming into specific groups. So I would like you to think about punctuation in this section and to really think about using it for specific reasons. So dash adds some extra information. Brackets include some similes. So you're adding that descriptive detail. A colon, you're going to start a list, and the speech marks for dialogue or sarcasm. So what could it look like if you're zooming in? Noise and chaos, screams of joy and cries of pain had broken out on the football pitch. So we're zooming in a bit closer to the football pitch. A cluster of boys, like an angry circus of clowns, rolled uncontrollably across the threadbare grass. Red face fumed and shouting abounded. Disagreements about the offside, anger about the fouls, upsets about tackling, insults about close marking. The poor ref was overcome with complaints that threatened to halt the game completely. So I've zoomed in to this group of young boys, I'm sure there are girls with them as well, playing football. It's like a circus, there's no control, it's chaotic, it's uncontrollable, and you can see how I've used these specific punctuation marks to really add specific detail. So I've added the detail of the joy and the pain, I've added the simile of the clowns, I've added all the different things they're arguing about. They're arguing about offside and you fouled me, you tackled me, you're marking too close. And then this idea that the ref, just another child in the playground, is going to say, look, that's it, I quit. He's going to halt the game completely. Okay, that's the first zoom. The next zoom is now zoom thinking about a particular child, an individual. And I'd like you to really think about crafting your sentences. Think about adding an adverb or an adverb phrase at the start, adjectives in the middle, and then alliteration at the end for this section that focuses on an individual. What could that look like for your playground description? Menacingly, the stealthy juvenile silently stalked his target. So can you see how I've started with that adverb, menacingly, and I've used stealthy in the middle, and then I've talked about how he's stalking his target. So you can see I've used AAA here to try and shape and craft my description. So what is this juvenile doing? Why is he stalking? Why is he stealthy? Well, he's drifting in between the younger children, and he spotted an unsuspecting loner on an empty bench with a fabulously full lunchbox. So I want to zoom in. What's he doing? He has seen someone who's on their own. So can you see the contrast between the empty bench and the full lunchbox, fabulously full, adding that alliteration at the end of the sentence? In one swift and agile move, the clever thief greedily grabbed the loot of food and hurtled away guiltily. Okay, he's stolen someone's lunchbox. Very naughty. I'm sure one of those terrier type Rottweiler teachers is going to sort him out, grab him and discipline him. So can you see how I've tried to start the sentence with an adverb phrase? I've tried to use an adjective and alliteration in the sentence to really craft and shape my description as I zoom in to an individual. Now I'm thinking about thoughts and feelings, zooming in even further. And for this, I really want to think about different types of sentences. Now, apart from just ordinary sentences that just state declarative sentences, there are four main types of sentences, and you can sail through your sentence forms by remembering sail. So you've got the strong emotion or exclamation sentences. I can't believe it. So they obviously have an exclamation mark at the end to show a strong emotion, a strong feeling. You've got your question or interrogative that ask why. It's an asking type of question sentence, and you use a question mark at the end of the sentence. And then you have your imperative, which is the bossy verb, a command or an invitation, wait. And then the fourth sentence type is a list. Now your list may not have any ands in between. Worry, fear, anxiety, nervousness, horror, and shame filled my head. So it might be asyndetic, or you might want to use lots of ands that makes it build up and even more panic. Worry and fear and anxiety and nervousness and horror and shame filled my head. So it might be a syndetic list, using all the connectives to join the different aspects, different elements in the list. So those are the 4 different types. Now, when we zoom in, the third zoom, really zooming in into thoughts and feelings, we're going to try and use the 4 different sentence types. So I've tried to zoom into poor Marge, who's terrified, and she's sitting in the playground thinking. I've tried to zoom into her thoughts and feelings and try to use the 4 different sentence types. So I've written something like this. The playground, Marge was terrified and she sat musing. And I've used a code on here to just introduce her thoughts and feelings. The playground monitors are deadly. Who knew that a year 6 student can have so much power? Don't upset them. They can make the lives of us younger kids miserable. Time out, detention, visits to the head teacher, banishing you to the back of the dinner queue. So can you see, I've really tried to get into Marge's thoughts, her feelings. She's feeling very intimidated by the playground monitors, the play leaders, play helpers, they're called in some primary schools. And she thinks they're deadly, and she's worried about getting sent to the back of the dinner queue because she's worried about upsetting them. So you can see I've tried to use the 4 different sentence types with the exclamation after deadly, with a question mark, who knew they had so much power, don't upset them, which is the imperative, and then that list of all the different things that she's actually worried about the playground monitor or the doing to her. Okay, and then the ending. Now, because I started with this idea of a swarming hive of innumerable students buzzing around, I wanted to end also strongly, to take this idea of animals and really to develop it in the writing. So I've taken the idea of kind of 4 different animals as I close off and end strongly, returning to the start. So unruly hawks, screeching. So this idea that children are swooping down on boards and swooping in and out of the playground. The thunder of stamping elephant feet. So you've got this idea that it's almost like a stampede of children on this noisy playground. The crash of clumsy rhino goalkeepers. So these goalkeepers are this energetic creature trying to save the goal, but I've also kind of played on the plural noun, the collective noun of a crash of rhinos. The hyena giggle of eager friends. So again, I've tried to represent all of the joy and the noise and the giggles in the playground. An ordinary play, an ordinary day in the playground. So kind of ending strongly with a kind of sense of humor and maybe irony that all of these hawks and elephants and rhinos and hyenas who are screeching and stamping and crashing and giggling is just what happens in a school playground. And that is the structure. Okay, so I hope that I've filled you with confidence. I hope that now that you have seen this seminar, you can have a go as well. So it's your turn now. So hopefully you can have a go at describing a playground. Use your imagination. It might not be the playground that I've described. It might not be a hot, sunny playground. It might be a playground where everyone's going and leaving and saying goodbye. It's the end of the year. It might be a wet, dripping playground when they've been doused with rain. But whichever playground you're describing, don't forget to use sensory description. Make sure you use auditory, visual, tactile, gustatory and olfactory description. Don't forget to use mopes to really add an exciting opening. Don't forget to use zoom when you drop, zoom, zoom, zoom and end. Think about using punctuation that's varied, sentence structures that are varied, and sentence forms that are varied. Thank you, Year 7. Thank you for joining me, and see you next time.